And my guests are Richard Tyrell. He is the chairman of the Springfield Veterans Activities Committee. Also with us, Peter Lappin. He is a former chair of the Veterans Activities Committee in Springfield. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. We're here to talk about a very important event coming up Sunday, March 30th, the ceremony to mark Vietnam Veterans Day, 39th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. Mr. Tyrell, tell us a little bit about the importance of marking this day each year.
For me and for the veterans that I know, the importance comes in remembering the young men and women that sacrificed their lives in the Vietnam War and the importance that they had in our lives and the great loss to the lives of their families. And
you, sir, not to embarrass you, but you're a combat veteran of Marine Corps. You were a teenager when you arrived in Vietnam.
Yes,
and
I was 18.
Mm-hmm. And you saw and you were part of some tough stuff. Not to bring back bad memories.
No, but I would say that my experiences were not, they were unique. Each person's experience is unique, but they were very similar to every ground soldier or Marine rifleman in Vietnam. Our mission was to seek out, make contact with, and destroy the enemy. And their mission was just like ours.
Well, Peter Lappin, you're a veteran of the Army, 1st Airborne, I believe.
First Airborne, that's correct, Jim. Yep.
Vietnam era veteran?
That's right.
I don't think you were in country.
No, because
just so we're all
kind of missed it.
clear.
I was during the Cuban and the Panama crisis, and
that was bad enough.
Oh yeah, we flew out every day for 5 days from Florida, and next to the last day, everybody said, "Okay, we're going in." And oh my God, everybody was blessing themselves. The chaplain was on the
plane.
Scary
times.
Guy says, "Can we go to confession?" Father said, "I'll give you absolution now."
Easy. Let me ask you about the ceremony itself. What happens in Court Square on Vietnam Veterans Day?
It's the 30th anniversary, because 1984 is when the statue actually, and the monuments, I should say, were built. Started under Teddy DeMauro and to our good friend Congressman Neal, the former mayor then, who really kind of carried it on and finished it and got the land and the property for us. What I think it really, and I think Richard alludes to it, I think, Jim, is the fact that veterans come together, Vietnam veterans come together. You know, we try to get other veterans from Desert Storm 1 and 2, Iraq and Afghanistan, and we try to recruit those individuals if we can. But the greatest thing, though, I think, is when they read the 50 names on the monument. And that brings back a lot of memories to a lot of guys, I think, who knew, and some of the families who do show up for that particular event, Jim. And when they read those 50 names, you know, and at the end of each name they say, "Missing in action, sir." And that really, killed in action, sir. And that really kind of, you know, strikes home, I think, Jim, with a lot of people, those who come, those who are just, you know, are going by. But the main thing is all of the old veterans that come down, and I hate to say old veterans, because a lot of them are old, but they really, you know, it brings back memory, but it brings back the camaraderie too.
Gentlemen, let me ask you both. I'll start with you, Richard Tyrell. Vietnam veterans didn't get the parades or the thank yous when you came home from what was a pretty unpopular war. Does that make it, do you think, especially important to have this kind of event now every year?
Yes, it does. Coming home, I had a unique experience in that I had a wonderful homecoming experience, from the flight from California to a large crowd at Bradley to welcome me to a party. And but generally, I feel that the country blamed the men and women of the military for the war, and the politicians of the time just like, well, you know, like a water rolling off a duck's back. If it didn't draw fire to them, they were comfortable with it at the time. And Vietnam veterans, generally speaking, decided that we had to create our own voice. And we began in small groups like the Winchester Square Vietnam era vets here in Springfield, up to the Vietnam Veterans of America, which was established to represent us. And things began to change once we got our voice within the system. And I think the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was probably the biggest turning point. I happened to go to it. I marched in the Welcome Home parade for that in the Massachusetts contingent. And it was both a very touching but renewing experience to share that time with other Vietnam veterans. And there was over 100,000 people there, and yet it didn't seem crowded at any one moment because we all seemed to respect each other's space. And it was just from there, we continued to work, and as we worked and matured, because many of us were just plain angry, but as we matured and expressed ourselves more correctly, things started to turn around.
Peter, it's a different experience that we've seen today when people are saying to men and women in uniform, thank you for your service. Folks in that era didn't get that.
You're correctly, Jim, and I think, Richard and some of the other guys on the Veterans Activity Committee, some of the stories that they tell about coming home and people kind of almost spitting on them and saying, baby killer, you did this, you did that. But today, though, I think one of the biggest things I think, Jim, is, we have to look at the, the World War II veteran, okay? And today, almost 800 are dying a day. 800. Up at the Soldiers' Home, there's a plaque up there, and there's a story about 800 a day. Remember that. But the other big thing, though, is when you think about all of those who are coming home, okay, and the adjustment, that's the major thing, is the adjustment, I think. And the big thing now is, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think Rich can probably relate to that. I understand there's a suit, I think, in Connecticut now, where some of the Vietnam veterans, when they come home, it wasn't really a recognizable disability. Well, now they're suing, the VA to get, the understanding that it was a disability. But the big thing is, because I have a son-in-law who served in Desert Storm 2, Marine, and some of the stories that he says, it's just amazing, what transpired, what went on, and I mean, coming home after, guys being on a patrol and, there's an attack, and Christ, he looks around and his buddy in back, his head's gone. God forgive me for saying that. But that's the mental anguish that a lot of these guys went through, Jim. But they are getting recognition, though, okay? And even today, I think it's kind of nice when you go someplace and they see the pin and they say, hey, thank you for your service.
Gentlemen, I hate to say it, we're out of time. The event is 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon, March 30th, Court Square in Springfield. Public is welcome and encouraged to attend.
Absolutely,
Absolutely,
welcome.
absolutely,
Please
Jim.
attend.
Thank you for your time,
Absolutely.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jim.